Early Middle Ages. The early Middle Ages was the period in European history between the end of the Western Roman Empire, around the year 500, and approximately 1050 or 1050. The era saw a decline in centralized authority, trade, culture, education, literature, and other arts that flourished under the Romans. It is sometimes referred to as the Dark Ages. Waves of migrating peoples entered Western Europe and created their own kingdoms. Conditions improved with the establishment of the Carolingian Empire and the birth of feudalism. But disruptions from Viking invasions at the end of the period caused more disorder. Europe after Rome's fall. The Roman Empire separated into eastern and western halves in the year 285 because it was too large to govern efficiently as one unit. Soon afterward, waves of barbarian tribes began flowing into the empire. After the Roman Empire disintegrated, the breakdown of Roman social order led to declining trade in Western Europe. At the same time, cities in Western Europe declined in population. Over time, the tribes replaced former Roman rule throughout the Western Empire. Earlier tribes adopted some aspects of Roman culture, but later tribes, such as the Franks, largely retained their own customs. In the late 5th century, Clovis I united the Franks into one loose political group. He established control over most of Gaul and brought in thousands of Frankish peasants as small farmers. Clovis also ordered the Franks to be baptized in the Catholic Church, recognizing that a single faith would help unite his people. Charlemagne and the Carolingian Renaissance. Charlemagne became king of the Franks in 771. For over 40 years, he worked to extend his empire and to convert neighboring pagan barbarians to Christianity. Territories in modern Germany, Italy, and Spain were all taken by Charlemagne's armies, and local populations were forced to be baptized. Charlemagne also appointed counts who held authority over captured regions. The counts kept order, collected taxes, and provided soldiers for wars. And Charlemagne dispatched officials to check on the counts to make sure they were governing honestly. His devotion to the church was rewarded by Pope Leo III, who crowned him as the first Holy Roman Emperor. The Carolingian Renaissance was a time of great cultural activity in lands ruled by Charlemagne and his successors. The stability of Charlemagne's empire brought prosperity. He was determined to increase learning in his kingdom and to improve religious life and practice. Some of Charlemagne's early legislation ordered that religious leaders open schools at cathedrals and monasteries to teach boys to read and write and to improve the education of priests. He used his power and wealth to attract leading scholars from all over Western Europe, and monasteries copied many classical manuscripts and religious works. Monks invented Carolingian minuscule, a uniform system of letters that for the first time included lowercase letters. These monks also developed medieval Latin, which became the period's universal language of scholars, traders, and officials. The Carolingian Renaissance also included works of art and new architectural styles. Viking raids. Beginning in the late 18th century, raiders from Scandinavia, known as Vikings, mounted expeditions to loot towns and monasteries in Europe on the coasts and along rivers. The Vikings used their long ships to attack and retreat before larger opposing forces could be organized. They ranged as far as the northeastern coast of North America to the Ukraine and the Black Sea. Viking traders reached the Middle East and North Africa, and Viking settlers could be found in parts of England, Sicily, and northern France. The Vikings replaced the ruling classes in many of the areas in which they settled. While they passed along much of their technology and culture, the Vikings were also influenced by the cultures in which they came in contact. Most importantly, around the year 1000, most Scandinavians accepted Christianity and more fully became part of European medieval culture. Feudalism. The weakness of central governments after Charlemagne and their failure to halt Viking raids led to the rise of feudalism. Mounted soldiers were the most effective defense against Vikings, but kings and emperors lacked the bureaucracy and resources to maintain sufficient armies. Instead, local nobles received authority over territory in return for promises to fulfill certain obligations. Rulers could call on nobles for military support, while local peasants received protection in exchange for services, usually farm labor, to the nobles. The system gradually became more formalized and hereditary. Feudalism continued until European monarchs were able to centralize their control. The early Middle Ages was a period in which European society began to recover from the fall of Rome. Germanic tribes dominated and adapted some Roman institutions to fit their needs. A short rebirth of a strong central government took place under Charlemagne, and his vision helped preserve the Roman and Christian past and set the stage for cultural developments in later medieval periods.